2022 Committee of the Whole meeting for the Bluff Village Board of Trustees. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Ankerman?
Here.
Trustee Briand?
Here.
Trustee Fisher?
Here.
Trustee Marquis?
Here.
Trustee Rappin? Here. Trustee Ryder?
Here.
Thank you. Next is our non-agenda items and visitors for public comments. The Committee of the Whole allocates 15 minutes during this item for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the Committee of the Whole on any matter not listed on the agenda. Each person addressing the Committee of the Whole is asked to limit their comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. We do not have anybody in the boardroom today. Do we have anybody online, Drew?
No.
No. Thank you. Proceeding to item number 4, general business. The Committee of the Whole will entertain a request from anyone present to modify the order of business to be conducted. Did we receive such request?
No.
Thank you. First, item 4A are the consideration of the minutes from the March 14, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. A second.
Second.
Thank you. Any changes?
Voice vote's fine.
Thank you. Clerk, so this is a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. The motion passes. Next is item 4B, a discussion regarding outdoor food and beverage service on village property. Mr. Irvin, could you please give us a summary?
Sure. This is not a new topic to you all. This has been talked about as recently as October, but as you will recall, the village has been trying to help food service and beverage industries in the village, which because they've been particularly hard hit during the COVID pandemic. And one of the ways that the village has helped lift those businesses up was to give them access and use of the right-of-way, the village roadway on East Scranton in front of Block 1, as well as allow them to use other areas for outdoor dining. For example, Bluffington's has used the church's back patio. That's not part of their property. So the village's regulations were modified during this period to help those businesses. So the memorandum includes background and kind of how we got to this point, and really lays out 3 options to consider. Actually, a 4th one was offered this evening. I had a conversation with Trustee Rappin about another alternative that really involves using the existing area like it is, but removing the barricades off the far west side to open up access to parking that's on the south side, and kind of trying to play with that, dial it up, dial it back to figure out what's the, I guess, sweet spot to maximize the area and try to keep it as, vibrant as possible. And so I can bring up some images of that, but I think people understand that in concept, so that'd be a 4th alternative. But really it's, as you look at it, is, as you recall, the village approved back in October the resolution granting use of the street until the end of May. So the alternative is to let that expire as is. Alternatively is to allow the street setup to continue through September, as has been requested. Another alternative is to shift everything to the north side of the street, which was a little bit kicked around the first time around, and see, kind of move it to a more parklet alternative, which interestingly is not unlike the concept for Block 1 that's been approved. And then the last alternative, again, is that, kind of pushing the barricades on the far west side of the existing setup further east to open up parking. I did have a brief conversation with the village engineer, Jeff Hansen, that that could be done. It may take some striping and some small costs, but it can be done, and we could find a way to make it work. So I throw that out there. I do know that Mike Dorniker from Lake Bluff Brewing Company is on the call. There was an email that got sent late in the day that was forwarded to folks, and hopefully had a chance to look at that. I did send a note out to all of our business merchants and property owners, hoping that they would come out and participate. I got some feedback from those businesses if keeping it like it is, it meant losing some parking, then they were open to the idea of continuing this helping hand, if you will, to certain businesses. At the same time, they were really hoping that it gets, there's some beautification that's done. I mean, the village has been the primary party in that effort we've done, and it's not been a lot, right? We've been focused on public safety and keeping the areas, trying to keep the consumers in those areas safe by having the physical barriers, but there has been some very small expenditures related to beautification, but not a lot. But that's generally been the feedback. Hasn't been a lot, but that's what it is. I think there was early comments that the village got back at the end of last calendar year that in general, that this was a concept of, continuing something like this was very well received by the community in terms of having more outdoor dining space in general. So that's certainly, I think, still stands true. So that's kind of like all the collective data. I'm happy to answer any questions. And again, Mike Dorniker is on the call.
Okay. Should we start with getting input from Mike Dorniker before we reflect on his opinions?
Sure.
Let's have Mike first.
Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, hello. I'm assuming everyone read my letter, but I would like to reiterate and say thank you for coming up with that idea initially during the pandemic to put that seating out there. That was really key for us to stay afloat during some really tough times. And so thank you for that. And I appreciate you guys taking this up today, just talk about extending it. Beyond my letter, I would like to just reiterate that the last 4 months has been the worst 4 months in this company's history, revenue-based, and it's just, we're just hoping to get some more of the extended seating to kind of make up for that. And that being said, we have a lot of biking groups that come through. We have a biking group every Tuesday and a biking group every Sunday starting in April that comes through. And one of the big draws that they like is, a big wide open area for them to kind of space out and be able to put their bikes and be able to see their bikes. And so I think that outdoor seating has brought a lot of people to the community to show, what Lake Bluff has to offer. And I think increasing that through the summer will also help bring more people in from outside. I did read on the agenda packet, about the farmers market. And I would just like to note, I think that the farmers market is, I think a total of 19 days out of the 120 we're requesting. And anything we can do to help them, we've let them use the tent, and anything else we could do barricade wise or whatever to help facilitate the farmers market, we're more than happy to do. The other thing is that over the last year, the labor costs and the raw materials cost has significantly increased. And so, we're really hoping to have some extra seats to help offset those costs. So we don't have to look at a price increase or two throughout the summer. If we can get the additional seating, we won't have to do a price increase at all. And I think that would be beneficial for the town as well. And so I think that's pretty much my main point, as well as what was in the letter. But I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Thank you, Mike. We have one question from Steve Rappin.
Yeah, hi, Mike. I just wanted to ask, the tent, without the tent, if the setup were the same as it is now, but the tent weren't there, do you feel like you would lose much business just having tables and no tent?
I would be open to that. I think what the tent provides is we still, I guess, I should say what I've seen here is on any days that are warm, people still sit out there. I know Drew and I talked a little bit about maybe taking some of the seating away entirely during the winter, but if it was 45 or above, people sat outside and they sat in the tent and they even sat outside the tent. And we've seen an uptick in sales in March just based on it being a warmer kind of month. And so, I think what the tent brings is that on a really hot day in July or August, it provides shade to the customers. And on a really rainy day, it also provides some protection, for the rain to where we can kind of continue business for the day. So I think it would impact sales, but if it meant the difference between keeping it and not, I wouldn't be opposed to eliminating it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions on the board?
I have a question, Mike. Hi, Taryn Fisher.
I,
Can you weigh in? Let us know if there would be any impact at all if we did consider moving the tents and the setup to the north side of Scranton instead of where it is now.
Are you suggesting are you suggesting Drew and I talked a little bit about, I think it was option 2 or option 3. Are you talking about giving us the parking spaces, or are you talking about still continuing it for it to be a one-way and you just move the setup to the north side?
Yeah, moving the setup to the north side and still having the one-way.
No, other than it's nice to have the shade. It's nice to have the shade for the majority of the seats. I don't see any problem with it, no. Again, the tent helps provide the shade.
Thank you. Erin, are you okay? So any more questions on the board? Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
We also have Greg Durman from Maverick's online. Greg, are you online?
Hi, yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Great. So, I apologize, I'm just jumping on this. We're kind of busy in the dining room at the moment. So I'm not sure where you're at, but were you looking for me just to contribute kind of how I feel, or?
Basically, we are looking at, this is the committee of a whole, we're looking at different possibilities for, this is discussion regarding outdoor food, beverage, and beverage
Right.
service on village property, and we're looking at 3 possibilities to continue outside service. That would be, item A would be continue as it is set up today. Item 2 would be terminate that possibility of serving outside on village property. And item number 3 would be moving what would be on the south side to be on the north side, so that basically you wouldn't have to cross the street, for example, but basically continuing service outside.
Is that, if I clarify, if it's all right, there's actually, I think it's 5 alternatives that we're talking about now. So it's, as you said, it's the first one is continue as is. 2 is to terminate, let the resolution expire and go back to pre-pandemic use. 3 is to move things to the north side, but only in the north side parking stalls, with the parklet kind of option. The other option is shifting the existing layout, moving the west side, opening up some of the parking stalls on the south, but by pushing the barriers west. And then the 5th, which I believe Trustee Fisher mentioned, was flipping it to the north and making the one-way now come the opposite side and come in, traffic would be coming eastbound. So that's the 5 alternatives that are currently being discussed. So Greg, I don't know if you heard, but Mike Dornicker from the brewery outlined, maybe you saw his letter, but he kind of outlined how the business needs, why having the village authorize the existing system was the most ideal for his setup, and how it benefited him, and kind of how his business, how it fared during COVID, and how this, allowing the existing situation to continue would help him deal with that. He actually said the last 4 months were the worst from a revenue basis that he's experienced thus far. So just sharing in case you missed that, and if you had maybe some insight to share with the village board about your experience with Mabry's Public House and maybe.
Sure.
You know.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, first of all, I would thank everybody for giving us the opportunity to use that out there for the duration there. That was a big help for us, and it definitely generated, additional revenue, and I think just made people more likely to come out, or that they were able to sit outside. In some ways, I think it kind of opened a little bit of a can of worms because I think people enjoyed it so much. And when people ask me about it, whether it's going to be there or not, I say, well, hopefully, but they're maybe gonna cancel it. And it certainly is like disappointment because I think it just really just brought a lot of life to the town center here. And I know that there's talk of redoing this streets hopefully maybe down the road somewhere, but I think in the interim, for us, we would like to continue to use it just because I think people love it, and it definitely helps us generate more sales on those beautiful days in the summer. It's a lot more than on the sidewalk there. Additionally, for us, the struggle certainly is not over. We had a lot of business, come back, and people are happy to be dining inside. I think when there's an outside alternative, I think everybody's going to turn that way. But our new, I guess maybe call it pandemic or whatever that we're sort of facing is just the cost. So I'm sure you guys all know going to the grocery store of food and everything that we have is from labor to food is kind of out of control. And we're hoping to have just a booming summer to help us with that, because even though our sales, unlike Mike's, have been pretty solid this first quarter. Our bottom line is not what it should be, and maybe it's our slow reaction possibly to raising prices on our side. But the more business we do, the better we're able to sort of keep our prices. And that outside definitely, presents the opportunity for having a better summer for us. And like Mike mentioned too, we're happy to work with, anybody and everybody on how to, present it in a way that everybody's happy with. I think the struggle that we've sort of gone into is, pouring money into, furniture or, whatever it may be outside without knowing, sort of the duration of where that investment's going to sort of, lead, whether it's, till the end of June or, July or August, or, be continued on for, summers, to come is a big question for us. It certainly is a little bit more difficult for us, serving on the other side just because of the distance from our kitchen to, across the street. But, we're happy to, overcome those, difficulties, in order to have it. But, so I'm willing to, obviously talk about, moving it to the north side of the street rather than, the south side of the street. But I think it's just more, I think now what you guys are looking for is just to find whether you want to keep it going at all. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Greg. Questions on the board? Steve?
Yeah, quick question, Greg. What would your preference be? Would it be to, continue to have a greater amount of seating on the south side or to have a smaller amount of seating on the north side?
I guess my preference would probably be, on the north side, just because it kind of keeps everything kind of together there. And I think it opens up, a little bit more parking, but I also don't have a tent, like Mike does. And so, I knew he made a big investment with that. So, I'm happy to honestly go either way on it.
And a follow-up question. Do you have a sense during, June, July, August, what percent that outdoor seating area is of your revenue? Does that give you like a 25% boost, or is it more minimal than that?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about like where like our summer business is, compared to, the rest of the year, I mean, I think our summer business is probably closer to like a 35% increase. And certainly, we see the difference, when it's raining as opposed to when, it's beautiful outside. And if the question is too, whether people are eating outside or whether they're eating inside, if it's a beautiful day, I mean, it could be as much as, 75% to 80% of the people, are waiting to sit outside rather than, settling to sit inside.
Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
Yep.
Questions, guys?
Are we into general questions, or are we still addressing?
No, let's hold on for general questions. Questions to Greg especially? No? Thank you very much, Greg. Thank you very much for your output.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you all.
Yes. Let's open questions, general questions.
Well, my thought was if we have something that is like the plan that was presented for the Block 1 renovation, whatever version most mirrors that, I think this offers a unique opportunity to do a trial where we're actually testing out some of these ideas without changing all the things that we could change. Now, it won't be exactly the same because of the curbs and some other things, but we can try some of those ideas, kind of mocking it up a little bit and seeing how we function in the space. And I think that that really is a unique opportunity before we make some of these bigger decisions. And if we have that opportunity and don't take it, I think it's a real miss, because there are those questions that keep coming up, the what if, and how is this really gonna work? If we can mock that up and play with it and live with it and see if we can tweak it before it becomes more permanent, then I think that that's a huge opportunity that we should take advantage of. So however, whichever one of those versions, or that version plus another tweak or two, would be the version that I would think would be the one that we should try. And so I think it would be moving to the north side, maybe some tweaks with parking, but just trying to mirror as much of that on a temporary basis as we can.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I have a question about the parking on the north side. I'm looking at two different maps, one current Google map from I don't know when. Oh, it says 2022, but there's only the 5 spaces and then there's no space in front of the bank. Is that the current state? Okay.
In front of the bank is a loading zone.
Yeah, an older picture had some spaces there. It didn't, or at least it looked like it. In any event, this is what I thought it was. So I have a distinct preference to get the parking on the south side of the street back open. I think it has hampered our farmers market in a significant way to have that there, although maybe, as Mike pointed out, they were able to use the tent. My observation is that parking is pretty prime parking, and they need to maneuver. And I think it would be a real loss, even if it is 19 days, to the community to have some degradation of the farmers market. I think that they've been team players, as has the community, on having the south side closed for as long as we have. And so I'd like to see us get to the sidewalk, preferably. But I can also understand perhaps giving up these maybe 4 of the 5 spaces, or perhaps all 5 of the spaces on the north side, if we need to do that. To Barbara's point, it might be a nice way of identifying what works, what might be worth investing in, in Block 1 going forward if we were to do that, but I think especially with summer coming, that appreciate that we have rain sometimes, and that's inconvenient and probably represents revenue loss when people can't sit outside, but I'd like to see us get back to the north side of the street and preferably not the tent.
Thank you. So let me rephrase what your preference is. It would be item 3 or item 5. This is where my question to you is, with and thereby regaining access to the village market for parking and logistics on their market. So my question to you is, are you talking about item 3 as stated or item 5 as stated
think
by
it's
Mrs.
A one-way
Fisher?
or a two-way?
I think item 3 had 2 ways, right?
No, item 3 is one
One
way
way.
as it stands today. Item 5 is reversing the one way.
Oh. I don't have a preference. I thought item 3 was 2 ways.
Item 3 is not
Item 3 is the parklet. I think that's what we talked
The
about.
park
where
lit, but it still has room for 2 ways.
Yes, it's two-way.
Okay.
It's 2 ways.
Is it two-way?
Yeah.
Okay. So I think my preference is to either get all the way to the sidewalk or to take up 4 parking spaces there at the most, on the north side. I don't think I put that in the form of a question, so I apologize. It's not Jeopardy, right? Yeah.
Can I just,
Yes. So thank you, Susan. Joy?
okay. I just had a question, having read the email from the farmer's market. Are they requesting that there be nothing in the street? Or if we are in the parklets, if we're in those 5 stalls on the north side of the street, can their vehicles, the vehicles of the merchants, and the, can they still work on that street?
I think the answer is yes. And my conversations with Pony Swanton, the chair of the Farmers Market Committee, a week ago, a week and a half ago, I guess, were that they, if it went to the parklet concept, they could work with that. I mean, it's
Okay.
just the idea of the tent and that space is that, you know, that's, there's merchants load on that side. That's a high priority side.
I guess I would, having heard everything and read everything, I mirror kind of what Barbara and Susan said. I like the north side of the street better from a safety perspective, I think. I appreciate not having the wait staff move across the street. And I think it does mimic what we might want to do in the future on that block. I had a little bit of concern with two-way traffic that Drew and I spoke about earlier today. And I think that the resolution there would be that we could move, Drew may have already mentioned, move the lines over a little bit so the cars aren't quite so close. And have a little bit of a barrier on the north side by the parklets so that, you know, cars aren't going right next to people who are eating. But I think at this point, it's kind of time to dismantle the tent, kind of move things over to the north side. Let's see how that works. And I think it's a nice compromise. And I'm concerned about the farmer's market. I want to make sure they've had a couple of years that have been out of the ordinary. So if we can make it a little easier for them this summer, I'd like to be able to do that.
Thank you. Excuse me. Kate?
I'm in favor of option 2. I think it's time to move on, and the reason I'm not in favor of getting rid of the parking on the north side of the street is that it does impede the farmer's market. Option 2 is the best for them, and despite the fact that they are only take place 19 days a year, we have other days, events that are one day, and they're really important to the community and the culture of the community. And this is also an inequitable setup because no other business benefits from public property use in this way. So we do not have 2 businesses in town. There are other restaurants that do not have this privilege. And having had a lot of experience in the restaurant business, you just have to operate in this space in which you are in, and with the sidewalk space you have. So while I appreciate the argument about, well, this could be an experiment, it's hugely inequitable, and I've heard that from other business owners in the central business district. I've heard a lot from residents. People call me just about this. When is this going to go away? So my vote would be for us to take no action, for this to expire, and while I appreciate the hardships that these two establishments have been under, as have every other restaurateur in America and in Lake Bluff, it's unfortunate, but they do have outdoor space. They have the sidewalk. And there are other tenants in that building, primarily Wintrust. And that delivery spot is a Brinks truck parking space and a delivery space for B Market and the restaurant. And the alternative, the Brinks truck will not go into the parking lot behind the building because it's not safe, because they can get trapped in there. But the delivery truck did, and I texted Drew a photograph one day where I had pulled through the drive up and I went to make what you're supposed to do, the right, to get out, and I couldn't because there was a delivery truck parked blocking. So I had to go left, going the wrong way, back onto Sheridan Road, and a big pickup truck had to follow me. And it created a really dangerous condition. So that space in front of Lake Forest Bank and Trust is really key. So if we were to do what we're talking about on the north side and create a narrower street, I think the bank might have something to say about that, because we can't forget that drive-through is used a lot. And it's been the source of backups there. So I really think it's time to move forward. I appreciate where these two business owners are coming from. But as I said, the inequity bothers me a lot. We're not doing this for anybody else. And that I have a real problem with. And we have to remember, all of this was predicated on the inability to dine indoors because of a government mandate. That is gone. So now everybody is level playing field, and I think we need to level it for the farmers market too. I agree. They're very, very important, and they've had a tough go. So let's kind of bring us back to, in my view, that's where we should come back to pre-pandemic situation, and that would be my vote.
Thank you. So we are sitting here with 5 voices, pretty much moving business outside on the north side of Scranton, and Kate saying it is time to end this program. For these 5, for you 5 having a different opinion, do you have more to express?
Yeah, I just want to address a few things that Kate said, which, as always, Kate is very compelling and eloquent and intelligent when she pulls together her statements. I just want to disagree respectfully about inequity. I think that's the wrong word to use. Equity is taking into consideration the different places each business is at and meeting them where they are. I think what you're trying to say is it's not equal. The other businesses aren't getting the same treatment, yes, but we're not looking for equal, we're looking for equitable. And I think the other businesses in town have benefited from the tent and the dining space and just the outdoor space in general, because it kept people coming into the village. It kept people interacting with and remaining in the space and wanting to then go to the other shops. Where in many spaces that don't have those options, we see people not wanting to shop at all, or doing all their shopping online and staying, reclusive in their homes. We're all adjusting still to the change. And though, yes, there's no more mandate and we can eat indoors, I think the general consensus is we are not the same as people, as a society, as a community, as we were before the pandemic. And ultimately, people want to continue to be outdoors. It's a similar conversation that we had when we were discussing potential streetscape changes to accommodate or to continue to grow and adapt to this new world that we live in. So I am compelled to learn more about safety and take it and be equitable about how this would impact that block and the bank, and making sure that we are weighing that decision. But I am not totally convinced that the impact of at least the parklet concept would be such a hindrance to the delivery or to the bank. So that's where I would circle back. I'm not trying to change your mind, Kate, but I just think it's important to voice that I don't think it's as cut and dry as we haven't done the same for the other businesses. I think, again, the community benefits from when all of the businesses are succeeding.
Thank you. Barb
Reed.
or Steve?
Oh, I'm sorry, Barb.
I just wanted to know, you've heard from business owners, and I'm sure you've reached out to the bank because they're located right there. What kind of response have you had from them over the course of all the iterations of what's happening on that corner?
In general, there has been a great amount of esprit de corps. You know, the idea like, hey, we want to be, if it's helpful for this person, if they need it, then we'll try to find a way to make it work. I mean, that's general been the attitude of everybody, thankfully, right? It's been,
Right.
people have worked together through this difficult period and tried to help each other out. And the bank was closed a lot during COVID. There were times, you know, where that
that's
branch was
true.
closed. But we have maintained that their access, their drive-through, that's been a critical part of this. And I think that's another reason why they've been so agreeable.
Right, and so if deliveries were to take place in the back, is there a way to create a zone that needs to happen? A place that would happen specifically so that there is room to do all the other things? It's not a lot of space back there, but if people need to go through the drive-through and not go backwards down a one-way, that seems like a valid concern.
Yeah, you know, it's just, I mean, there's lots of ways to handle deliveries. You can set aside specific times when deliveries are permitted. There's lots of things you can do to regulate that. I think generally the village has been pretty,
Hands off.
yeah, loose with that.
Yeah.
And there's times when it's a problem and people think it's okay to park in the middle of Scranton and start unloading because maybe it's a new delivery driver or they're late on their run or whatever. But we've shagged people who have parked in front of the B Market where they've obstructed the crosswalk because they were making a run, they want to drop something off quickly, and, you know, we're very apologetic, but that's what they do, right? And so,
Right.
and we've pointed them, there's another access for deliveries further down Walnut, right across from that green little space. There's a place there that's lined off too, to help provide service, places to deliver, but it's, you know, generally they're, like you see with Amazon, they're trying to be whatever's most convenient for them.
Right. I continue to just be amazed when I go into the city in
Yeah.
Chicago, and huge volumes of traffic. People don't know you, don't care about you, and somebody will park where no one can get by, and they just put the flashers on and go do what they need to do for 6.2 minutes and come back. And, you know, there's their $100,000 truck with all the merchandise. I don't know how people do it, but if we can set aside for our businesses a place where this is a reasonable alternative, you can't control all the truck drivers, you can't control all the customers that decide they're more important than every other customer or every other driver. But if we can at least inform business owners of a reasonable option so that their, you know, usual delivery people can know this is where it would work best for everyone, that would be helpful.
For Lake Forest Bank and Trusts, there might be space for security, responding to Kate, there might be space on Sheridan Road itself.
I think Brinks is pretty strict about where they park.
Okay.
It's one of the most dangerous jobs that you can have. So
I understand
I
that.
think they probably have parameters around.
How
And
close?
the head of operations for Wintrust would know the answer to this, but how close they have to be to the door, and where the driver can see. So, because there are always two people. So that's a consideration. I think the only thing I would say to the delivery is we have the space. It's right there, and it's used every day. So it seems odd to me that we would create a scenario by which we would have to go back and reinvent the wheel when the space is already there and utilized. So I think we're making things much more complicated than they need to be, and option two just makes things so easy.
Thank you, Kate.
Wait, I'm sorry, can I just ask a quick, I'm sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Just a quick, so, because I'm a little confused. The space in front of the bank, we would not be putting anything sitting there permanently, would we? The space in front of the bank it would be empty, so the truck could still pull in and sit in front of the bank? Am I right? And,
I think all the alternatives could allow that to happen.
like, we're only
that space open.
talking about anything east of where you would come through for the drive-through for the bank,
I think
correct?
that's right, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to
So we
clarify.
could reserve that space for a truck, in addition to getting the driveway to the drive-through to be longer, basically.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was under the impression that one of the alternatives of the five would make the street one-way going east. in which case that, I mean, isn't one of the 5 options in front of us to take up so much space on the north side of the street that the street would be in effect one-way going eastbound? If those 11 spaces are open and we want more than just a tiny bit of space for tables off in those parking spaces,
So we
Am
have
I
two
wrong?
choices. We have two choices in between 3 and 5. 3 is both ways, is two directional, and 5 is, item 5 is one way, and I heard eastbound, correct? Eastbound, so that might be a discussion we could have afterwards.
right, that's what I was addressing.
But let's discuss first north and south, and before we get into a one-way, two-way. Joy, you were,
I'm done. Thank
you're
you.
good.
You done?
Steve?
Okay. I'll weigh in. I do think that it's not fair to harm the farmer's market. It's just, that's inequitable to me. In terms of just to comment on the inequity, I mean, we did just rehab Block 2, and it looks really nice. Block 1 didn't get that. I think we're doing lighting on Block 2 in a couple of locations. So things aren't always equal. The biggest part for me is when I looked over the past 2 years at the summer and the vibrancy that outdoor seating created for our community, that I think also impacted Block 2. To me, that's a little bit of the essence of Lake Bluff. That's to me, not to everybody, but to me, it brought people in from all over, and you could be a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night in July, and there was a scene going on, and I think that is special. So I'd like to keep that. I think that, you know, being on the south side of the street, it's what I had been thinking about, but in hindsight, that's not the right thing to do. I think that the tent, it's not a long-term solution for us. It's never going to be a long-term solution. I don't think putting a tent in front of the retail on the north side works either. So for me, I'm in favor of option 5 because I would like to have the scale that we had before. When I was talking to Drew earlier, I talked a little bit about basic numbers. So of the capacity that we have in the current situation, it was about 75% occupied on busy nights. And then there are nights where it could be 50% occupied and then maybe occasionally lower than that on rainy nights. If you were to just use the parking stalls on the north side, it would take it down to about 20% of the capacity. And to me, that's too small. I don't think that creates the vibrancy and the scale that we're looking for. So to me, it would be keeping option 5, which would be a one-way street, having more space, which would be consistent with what we're looking at doing more permanently if we do decide to do that. And I think as Drew and I talked about it, you could possibly push that out to make it like 50% on a capacity night as opposed to 75%. So to me, I think the best option would be to eliminate the tent, to be on the north side of the street, to stop at the bank, and I think it needs to look a lot better. Just the barricades. I mean, if we're going to do that, it just simply can't look like big concrete barricades, and we have to get a commitment from our businesses.
Thank you. One thing we discussed, Drew and I, about a week ago was, let's try the concept and put, instead of barricades or cement barriers, put pots, flower pots. Try the concept of flower pots to see how it would fit. Not a big expense, but at least try the concept of Block 1, and that might be an alternative to beautifying the space. Suzanne?
I was puzzled about the calculations, and perhaps it doesn't matter particularly whether I understand your math or not.
I know I didn't make it super clear.
That was why I was making the face.
Do you want me to clarify or not really?
Unless it matters to others, I don't know. It doesn't particularly matter to me. I think the curb is actually a little bit of a stumbling block, so to speak. Like, it is going to be really awkward because we're going to have tables up and then a curb and then tables down. So I'm having a difficulty picturing how that really helps to have us out into the street significantly, but I'm sure people who can figure it out. I'm still somewhat skeptical about the need to go to the street at all.
Thank you. We have Greg Dorman online, but before Greg, Kate, would you would you like to respond to the different feedback?
I think everybody knows where I stand on this, and Drew and I have talked about this repeatedly. I don't know about anyone else, but I've been contacted, like I said, numerous times by numerous people, and all they want to know is when is it going away. I agree with Trustee Ryder. I think the sidewalk, I mean, I don't know, I when I was practicing law, I dealt with plenty of people who stepped off a curb and it didn't end well, so as a restaurateur, that's not something I really would want to have to people to have to navigate. I think, I get it, what everybody's saying, and Trustee Rabin makes a good point. We did do a lot of improvements on Block 2, but we haven't done, I don't know, I don't think anything I'm gonna say is gonna make an impact on anybody. That sounds like everybody's made up their minds already, but I've made up my mind too, and I just think, I'm sort of with Trustee Ryder. I think the sidewalk is enough, if that's what you're saying. I think that's just the circumstances, when you pick that site to open a brewery or a restaurant, you know, that's what you have to work with. That's just the way it goes.
Thank you.
Just a short comment. It goes back to the study that we had done, I believe, last summer, which is what do our residents really want? And I also have had people say to me that, boy, it's pretty ugly the way it is. When's that going away? But the data said that our residents really want outdoor dining. That was the number one thing that they said they wanted. And to me, the sidewalk is so minimal in terms of the scale and the scope that, to me, it doesn't meet what our residents are asking for. It's not enough.
Would it be a possibility to have to put tar to actually fill the gap of a sidewalk temporarily?
You talking like asphalt?
Yes,
No, too expensive.
too expensive.
Yeah. I mean, this a parklet concept's been done for years, right? It's all over Chicago. It's all over. Everybody's doing it. It's very, very common.
Okay. Thank you. Let's have Greg Durman again. Greg, are you online?
I am, yep. And, you know, I just, after hearing what everybody said, I just wanted just to weigh something else in. And, you know, again, I mean, us as a business, I mean, we're able to function and we'll survive, you know, with the sidewalk. And it'll be great. Yeah, I just want to come back to, you know, again, I guess what I was trying to say was that I feel like the residents, I mean, I'm out there, you know, at least 5 nights a week and seeing the people, hearing the people. And I mean, people will be very disappointed, you know, by going back to just, you know, the sidewalk, I think in general. And I think sometimes, you know, we hear even, you know, in the business, you know, the squeaky wheel sometimes gets greased a little bit, you know, when people are complaining about something and not necessarily all the people that are enjoying it and just loving the atmosphere outside are not necessarily going to be calling, you know, City Hall or we're not, you know, and just saying, oh, this is great, we've done outside. You know, so I think just to take that into consideration. And then as far as, you know, the equity of everything, certainly, I mean, I don't know that you could do the same thing for everybody, you know, everywhere, just because everybody's, you know, so different and different spaces, you know, have different abilities. But you know, I think that the space that we have there, you know, there's just an opportunity to create something for the village. And, you know, I'm just, you know, why not, you know, sort of embrace it and go with it is sort of, you know, my, you know, taking on it. And then, you know, finally, as far as deliveries, you know, there is a delivery space that we try to get our people to use, you know, that's on the side street, kind of over by Hansa. You know, unfortunately, sometimes we have new drivers that do pull into the back there, and we discourage them from doing that and to sort of move on, because I know that it's no fun to get stuck back there, you know, behind a delivery truck. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let me try to give a summary to where we stand in terms of a consensus. So what we have is 5 voices with, on the north side, 1 voice that would be disbanding this element in our community, We're worrying about the delivery aspect for the bank, for example, for security aspect of it. So we could actually specify that the space in front of the bank stays a delivery zone, for example. And it might be useful to the different restaurants, for the brewery and the restaurants, to also use that space. So it could actually be a plus in our plan. I'm left with 2 ways or 1 way, okay, from a consensus standpoint. And from a plus standpoint, for me, Mr. Pony Swanton, we might have a possibility to run the market as of 2 years ago. That would be a plus for our community. Did I state that right?
The only thing I would add is I'd be interested in seeing some public safety drawings of what space we would have available on that north side and what it might look like 2 ways, because I'm having a little hard time picturing that 2 ways will still work. But is it possible that we can come out of this meeting and simply ask for, okay, version 3 and 5 are both written up or drawn up?
I think this is reasonable for us to make an informed decision.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add, but I think we could let the business owners know that I don't think this, I don't know, maybe I'm speaking too quickly, that it doesn't sound to me like this body is interested in continuing on the south side.
I would agree with that.
I would agree.
No, I'm agreeing with what you've said.
Oh, okay,
I think
okay.
that seems to be,
Off the table.
That's, yeah, so at least the business have some certainty about that we are willing to consider more space on the north side.
So from an investment standpoint,
Yes.
for Greg and Mike, we can say today that our decision will be to move on the north side and for them to make the necessary investment in furniture, for example. That is where we are.
On the north side, and to let us know what they think they could fit. I mean, if we go into the street, are they gonna get 20 more people, 20 more seats? Are they gonna get 10 more seats? Are they gonna get 50 more seats? I'd just like to know, the cost benefit of taking up the street, I guess. Go ahead.
I just have I'm concerned that if we bump out from the north side into the street, then that's going to adversely impact the farmer's market. They'll have that one small one-way lane, and then they'll have their merchants trying to park on the north side of the street. The road would be closed off the day of the market, and you'd have one lane, basically. And I'm not sure that that's enough space for the merchants in their trucks and their vehicles to maneuver through there.
For a one-way street, correct? Is what you're
Yeah.
saying? As opposed to a two-way street.
Yes.
Okay.
I guess I need some clarification, because I think if we're talking about just parklets, meaning taking up those,
The
the
horizontal
spaces.
parking
No,
spaces.
Parallel.
Yeah, the parallel.
The parallel, yeah, right, the up and down, like right. The east-west parking spots, not the parking spots on the south side, those would stay.
Right.
Yeah.
We have maybe railings or some kind of blockade so people can sit in what is actually those parking spaces. Isn't that the same as what the farmer's market has technically right now? Because those are parking spaces. Those aren't guaranteed access to the farmer's market.
Right, I think what I was saying is if we bumped it out even further and
Yes.
took up that extra lane.
Gotcha.
And made it into a one-way with one lane, would that then be too tight for the farmer's market, for the merchants to
Yes.
utilize that street? That's
Understood.
my
So the
concern.
question stands that we
Yes.
would need to go back to the village, to Jeff Hansen, for example, for exact measurement to see how this could actually evolve.
And to me, that is not enough space. That adds
What's
so
drawn
little.
there.
Yeah, that adds so little incremental that it doesn't create critical mass, that it would be good to kind of see some sensitivity analysis of what does the farmer's market need on the north side on the south side, sorry, to make it work, and how far could we push it to the south side while still having decent one-way traffic and making the farmer's market a
Okay,
success.
so I need to establish consensus, one way or two way. Okay, let's say that this is your opinion, this is not a technical, this is not so much backed by a technical measurement, but what is your feeling about one way or two way?
Regis, could I just address the one-way, two-way? What Trustee Rappin sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, suggesting is that we just flip it, and right, to get quote-unquote critical mass, so that by definition would require the street to be one-way. That makes the loading zone in front of Lake Forest Bank and Trust obsolete. Because you're gonna have to create the same, it would just be strange, that Brinks truck or whatever, first of all, the delivery truck's tailgate opens east. So now you're gonna be going eastbound, they're gonna pull in and they're gonna unload going toward Sheridan Road, which is really dangerous for them. These are big trucks. I walk by this every day with my dog, so I see these huge trucks up there. These are big trucks. So we're asking these guys to deliver out going west and come around. So they're gonna be backing out of a truck into traffic, turning, and not expecting to see them. This is my point. We're creating these dangerous conditions we're not thinking about as we're trying to help these people, which I kind of get as our purview, and it's kind of not. So I'm not as worried about critical mass as I am about the dangerous conditions we can be creating. And I am concerned that this email from Frank Swanton, he means it. And we really have to come back, and I think we should go back to him with this, what we're talking about, and say, what works? Because we have a lot of questions we don't have answers to as far as the farmer's market. But I think two-way traffic is critical, and I'm sorry that it might not create critical mass, but I'm not as worried about that as I am about losing the farmer's market or creating dangerous conditions for people that are necessary to come here to keep these businesses afloat.
We are improving on what Mr. Swanton is asking for, that is, we're providing loading and unloading zone to the market. Now, is it going to be a one-way? Is it going to be a two-way? We are also, the aspect here is also vibrancy of a village. That is, we created a place where people like to dine outside. The market opens 19 days a year. We're thinking about vibrancy in the village for 120 days a year. Okay, there is a compromise to be made. Now, can we work with a one-way with people trying to load and unload pickup trucks and bigger trucks for the market? It might be a technical decision where Jeff could help us, okay? So I don't really know. But from your standpoint, what I'm asking for is when you imagine the village, this is why we got elected, when you imagine the village, can you live with a one-way or does it have to be a two-ways?
Two-way,
Two-way.
has to.
I strongly prefer a two-way. I think it speaks to welcoming people and letting people come and go as they wish, as they live, as they work, wherever they are.
Thank you,
I would prefer that.
thank you.
We've had this discussion, and if it is a one-way, I think it's preferable that it's one-way headed east, because people are able to enter into the village on our main drag. So I'm not as firm. I am interested in, I couldn't weigh in with a solid answer without having the specs that we're talking about. I would like to see more about what does the farmer's market need? What are the delivery drivers need?
So intuitively, one-way east, but with a technical confirmation from Jeff.
Yes.
Joy,
My preference would be two-way.
My preference would be one-way. I find it hard, you know, in terms of the Brinks truck, we certainly could talk to the bank and see what they think is safe, but it's hard for me to imagine having a downtown destination where there's seating adjacent to two-way traffic. It just seems busy and a lot going on. It seems like too much, and I feel like a one-way would just make it a little bit easier. And I don't think that we ought to be bumping, we ought to have the same amount of tables as we did before. I just think what's shown up there is too little. So I would say one-way, most
one-way
definitely.
east or west?
It doesn't matter to me.
Okay, thank you. Susan?
Seems like if it's one way, it should go east, because that's the way the parking goes. We'd have to maybe we're gonna restripe it anyway, I don't know. In any event, I prefer two ways, and I prefer to know what we gain, specifically what we gain in terms of critical mass, if we go out further such that we need one way. I just think the cost benefit doesn't add up for me, and so I think two-way is what makes sense with something that looks like what Drew or Glenn drew up there.
Okay, thank you. Well, the consensus is,
I think it's that.
it's
That. It's
that
not
means-
universal, but it's the general consensus that be drawn up and brought to you at the next meeting in a form of resolution.
Exactly. So we had 4 two-ways and 2 one-ways, including one-way east.
And it's most like
And
the,
it's a
co-
partial.
Okay.
and it's pretty close to the Block 1 concept plan, right? And the idea of doing this with some barricades and some
Yeah.
planters to try to make it mimic what's there. And we benefited from this, learning that this was likable by the community. They like the outdoors, so how big, ideally, it could, go different ways, but this is closest to that. So
So we have a consensus, a shared, a somewhat of a consensus in this room.
Can I just say one last thing, which is about that drawing?
Sorry.
Which is Highwood has that right now in front of Miramar, in front of Longitude, and it's two-way traffic, and it's beautiful, and it functions, and it's vibrant, so yes, it can be done.
So Chicago's everywhere. I mean, this is everywhere, and it's been that way for years. And this actually came to the board. If some of you may be around, this came like a decade ago. We talked about doing this in front of Block 1 when the brewery first opened.
Yeah.
So it's not the first time this has been floated.
Well, I thank you for this discussion. And I would very much welcome a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And we're adjourned. Thank you very much. It is 7:02. Let's get back together at 7:10. 7:10.